All right, we're at module 10, and in this section, we're going to talk about adding visual effects, being able to enhance your video, the look of your video, and adding different styles to your video as well. So we'll dive into the basics of visual effects and applying those visual effects to your videos, but we'll also dive in and start talking about specific visual effects, like adding a drop shadow or corner rounding or reflection to your video to get really a specific style to your video. But we'll also dive in and talk about how to remove a background of somebody talking as well, and how you can quickly apply that effect. And then we'll get into adding a device frame to your screen recording. So automatically adding this to like a laptop or a desktop or a monitor or an iPhone or an Android, and how you can quickly do that. And then finally, we'll dive into motion paths, which are similar to the cursor paths that we learned about in the last section. But in this section, we can apply this to anything. We can apply this to a screen recording or to an annotation as well. We have a lot to cover, so let's go ahead and get started. Let's talk about how visual effects work in general. And then throughout this section, we can dive into specific effects and how they can add to your video style. We already worked with visual effects when we used Camtasia Rev. Rev gives us a quick and easy way to apply special effects. Let's go to those effects in the editor. Applying the effects is very similar to applying behaviors. Make sure you have something on your timeline, then click and drag an effect on the clip of your timeline. You'll notice that an arrow in the middle of the clip shows up. If I click on the arrow, it will open the effects tray and show all the visual effects I've applied. Just like behavior, I can add more than one visual effect. Stacking visual effects can generate some custom-looking styles. On the visual effects, you also have a handlebar at the beginning of the effect and the end of the visual effect. These handlebars allow you to adjust the start and end times of the effect. Click and drag to alter the effect's start and end time. You can access the properties on the effect either by just selecting the effect within the bottom tray, or just select the clip itself, and it shows up under the Visual Properties tab within the Properties section. Each effect will have different properties. I will not cover all of the effects, but we will dive into some specific ones you can use. Every property has various sliders, number entries, dials, and selections you can utilize to change the style of the effect. The best way to get to know them is to drag one onto the clip and then try adjusting the properties. If you need to remove this effect, you can select it from the tray on the clip and hit the backspace button or delete, or click on the X button on the top right of that section in the properties. As you click and drag other properties, you will see them stack on the clip within the effects tray, but you will also see them stack within visual properties. Now that we know how to add, adjust, and delete visual effects, let's dive in and start working with some specific effects to get various visual looks in the next couple of videos. Let's combine several different effects to see how they work together. We will use the drop shadow, corner rounding, and a reflection to get a similar effect to that which we got in Camtasia Rev. Adding these effects in a dynamic background will help you see how you can even edit the Camtasia Rev files in the future. First, let's start with a screen recording and a camera recording. To add a dynamic effect to the background, we must resize our screen recording to avoid taking up the entire canvas. Grab the handles and adjust the size to show black edges all around the screen recording. We will come back to the camera recording in the following video. Let's add a new track on the timeline and have it at the bottom of the track. Then right-click on the tracks and select Insert Track and add it either above or below. You can rearrange the tracks so it doesn't matter which one you select for now. Now move that empty track to the bottom. Let's now go to Media and then the Asset Store. Look through the dynamic backgrounds and choose one that you like. Click and drag that one that you want to the bottom track and stretch it out for the length of your video. Now that we have our background ready, let's go into our visual effects. With the dynamic background, you can see a border around our screen recording. Let's first add on corner rounding. Find corner rounding within the Visual Effects tab and drag it onto your screen recording, either on the canvas or the timeline. Within the properties, you can adjust which corners are affected and not affected by selecting this box. You can then adjust the corner curvature by clicking and dragging the radius slider. Adjust this to your liking. Let's add a drop shadow to make the screen recording pop out from the background. Find the drop shadow, click on it, and drag on that effect. You can now see that that drop shadow has been added. Now make sure that you select something else before you fully see that drop shadow. You can see that the shadow is stronger below and to the right of the screen recording. Let's select the screen recording again and adjust the angle. The first thing we can do is choose the position of that shadow. Right now it's on the bottom right. I'm going to change this to the center. Now the drop shadow is more even all around the screen recording. You can also change this offset by adjusting the slider labeled offset or clicking and dragging the dial. I'm going to adjust it back to the center. It will also adjust the slider when you click on the box. You can also change the color, the opacity of the shadow, the blur of the shadow, and how long it takes to animate in and out with ease. If the ease is set to 0, there will be no fade in or out, and the shadow will just be there. Because these are properties, remember that we can animate these properties by adding on a custom animation and changing the first and last point of the animation. Let's do one more thing and add on a reflection. Click and drag the reflection to the clip. You may not see the entire reflection. You could resize the screen recording to see more if you want to. I like to keep it subtle though. Within the reflection, you can adjust the distance and opacity. The distance will change the start point of the reflection, and the opacity will change the strength of the reflection. I like to apply these changes before making any edits, so I do not have to move across multiple clips and apply the same thing. Hopefully you can see how Rev makes this easier, but now you know exactly how it was made, so you can customize any Rev or any other screen recording you may do. We have our camera recording at the bottom right. Let's play around with the background removal next. Let's add another effect, but this time let's add it to our camera recording. We have a camera recording on the bottom right. I want to remove the background of this camera recording and have only me in the recording. You can add the Remove Background effect in the Visuals tab. Click and drag this onto the camera recording. Now you may get various results depending on your background. It is good to have a clear separation between you and the background. You can adjust the properties if you need to get what you want. The first option in the drop-down box is to select the quality. Within the quality, we have either accurate or balanced. Accurate may get out more details, but it may look more choppy. Balance tries to create a smoother blend between you and the cutout edges. On top of that, you can adjust the feathering, which is the edge blurriness. You can also change the opacity to create transparency within your camera recording and blur, which helps smoothen out your recording. On top of that, you can now adjust the ease in and out to have fade in and out. I suggest doing that if you will not always have the background removed. We can open the tray and drag the start and the stop handles only to fade out the background at certain times. You may also cut out specific parts of your timeline, adjust the screen recording to be full size, and then have it return back to smaller size on other parts. I'm going to cut right here. Let's select this clip and adjust the size to take up the full screen. I can select the effect on this cutout part and remove that effect. Now if I move my playhead back and forth, you will see that the camera recording will be full screen at the beginning and then switch to small screen on the bottom right with the transparent background. That way the viewer can see you in full screen for the intro of your video and still see a smaller version of you while they focus on the screen. Let's change it up a bit in the following video, and instead of having rounded corners with a dynamic background, let's add our screen recording to a device, something like a computer or a mobile device. We'll do that next. In the last couple of videos, we added a dynamic background and some style to our screen recording. It's very similar to what you see with Camtasia Rev. Now we will shake it up a bit and add on a device frame. Let's remove some of our effects and return to a screen recording that takes up the full screen size. A device frame allows us to add our screen recording to a device quickly. I will drag the effect from the visual effects panel, and like any other effect, drag and drop it onto the screen recording. You will see your screen update automatically and add the screen recording to a computer monitor. You can change the type of device in the visual properties. Notice the properties on the right. There is only one option, a drop-down box. I'm going to select the drop-down box. You can see that I can select a desktop, iPhone, MacBook Pro, or Google Pixel. You will see the frame updates when you select one of those options. However, if my screen recording is horizontal, it may look strange on a mobile device. You should record your screen vertically if that is going to take up the full screen. You can do this on your device and bring the screen recording into Camtasia. I'm going to switch back to a MacBook Pro. Now you can find other devices. Let's select the drop-down box again, and we're going to select Download More. It will pull up the asset library, but within your browser. Find a frame you like and select that frame. Select Send to Camtasia and it will start to download. And then once it's done, you can return to Camtasia. If I select the drop-down box now, you can see a new device frame has been added. You can easily select to switch to that new device. Currently, device frames are not part of the integrated tab within Camtasia, so you need to download them from the website. That may change in the future. Remember that some of them may be free, or some may require a premium plan. Now let's cover motion paths and how they are different from cursor paths as we learned about in the last module.
In this video, we'll cover the new tiling effect and progress bars. Let's start by exploring what we can do with tiling. Tiling allows us to create a repeated pattern across our canvas and animate the tiling. I'm starting with a blank canvas. The logo we will be using is the icon for my Learning Dojo company, which you can download and follow along. It is a white icon, so let's start by changing the background color on the canvas to the hex 44A5E1. Right-click on the canvas and go into Project Settings. Now let's go into the color dropdown. Let's enter in the hex code of 44A5E1 and click Apply. Perfect. Now let's add our icon. Take the icon you downloaded, or really any icon, and drag this directly onto your canvas. Make sure that the icon is now on the canvas. You can position and adjust this how you want. However, the tiling will copy the logo all over the canvas, so it is good to get a starting point. Now with that in place, let's add the tiling effect by going into the visual effects and then down to tiling. Now let's drag and drop the tiling onto the timeline directly on the image you want to have repeated. It has tiled our logo right away. If your logo is longer, you may need to make some adjustments. You will see a bounding box around the logo you dragged on. You can change anything about this anchor tile. It will update and change every tiled logo. You can even lower the opacity so it does not stand out as much. Along with the normal sizing controls, you get two additional handles, one that goes up and the other that goes to the right. If you move the top one left and right, it will adjust the angle of the repeating object, giving you a more angled repeated pattern. You can also move up and down to give yourself more space between rows and less space between rows if you bring it closer. Adjusting the angle to the right also adjusts the pattern angle, but moving it left and right will bring the items closer together within the row. Keep in mind that we can animate this. We can add on a custom animation to this image. Let's go ahead and add on a custom animation to this image. Let's stretch out the animation to be the entire length. Now on point B, let's adjust the Z rotation to be -360, which will be a full circle. Now hit play and watch what happens. The logo animates as the timeline plays, but all of the logos animate. This effect will help you create some pretty awesome backgrounds. Now let's explore adding on a progress bar to our video. Go into Media, and then Camtasia Assets. Scroll down to Audio Visualizers, and click See All. Audio Visualizers allows us to get effects that adjust with your audio. But they also have progress bars, so let's scroll down to the progress bars. Go ahead and click and drag the progress bar onto the canvas. Now you can click and drag the progress bar anywhere you want. You can also adjust the width and height of the bar to fit the size you want. If you do not want the width and height to be adjusted simultaneously, you can hold down the Shift button and keep holding as you resize the width and height to change just one. Now let's go to the timeline and adjust our progress bar to be the same length as our other objects. This will change the timing in the timeline and then update the progress bar animation to match the video speed. You can have the progress bar go throughout the entire video or just a portion of it. Within the properties on the right, you can adjust the color, the background, and whether you want the background to be transparent or not by adjusting the opacity slider. These settings let you get the desired effect for your progress bar. Feel free to explore some of the other progress bar options. This is how you create a tiling effect and add a progress bar. Let's go ahead and jump on to the next video.
We've already used motion paths, but within cursor paths. You can also add motion paths to other objects on your timeline. Why use motion paths over regular animations? The most significant benefit you can create in a motion path is the curves and multiple points you can make with motion paths. So let's get started by adding an annotation on our timeline. With the annotation on the timeline, go into your visual effects and drag on a motion path. When you first add a motion path, you will see the motion path on the object. If you click somewhere else, you may see it go away. To get back to the motion path, click on the annotation or object that has the motion path. You will see the properties of the motion path within the visual properties. Click Edit Motion Path to bring the motion path back up. You can now edit the motion path similar to what you were able to do with the cursor path. Notice the motion path automatically animates the object along a curved line. You can click on the point within the canvas and move it to whatever location you want. If you click on a point, you can adjust the handlebar to adjust the curve. Click and drag up and down to see the curve change. You can also add an additional motion point to add on more definition to your motion path. Within the canvas, you can right-click along the motion path and select Add Motion Point. You can now click and drag the point to adjust the curve. Each point has a handlebar. To adjust the handlebars even more, hold down the Control button and click and drag. You can also add or adjust motion points within the motion path on your timeline. Go down to the timeline and right-click on the spot that does not have a motion path. You must move your playhead to the part where you want to add a motion path. You can add a motion path at playhead within the menu. If needed, you can add a pause within the motion path, moving the playhead where you want to split. Then right-click and select Split Motion Path at Playhead to split the motion path. It will add motion points, but you can now click and drag the new part out. Doing this will pause the motion until the playhead reaches the new location. You can also adjust the start and end motion points handlebars. Within the properties, you can adjust the easing and angles of the motion points. Motion paths will allow you to create animated curves, but they also allow you to orient the object to rotate with the curve. If you want the object to move with the curve, select Auto Orient. Now move the playhead back and forth to see how the annotation rotates to follow the curve. Now we're going to explore other visual properties within an interactive activity next. So that is Module 10. We talked about the introduction to visual effects, being able to stylize our video, whether it be our screen recording or our live video as well. We talked about how to add drop shadow and corner rounding and reflection to get a really cool style to our video. That's very similar to the Camtasia Rev styles that we looked at. We also talked about being able to remove the background from anybody talking on camera as well to get a really cool effect and being able to put them on the bottom corner of your video. We also talked about being able to add your screen recording to a device. And so it looks like it's already on a laptop or already on a computer. And then finally, we talked about motion paths, being able to apply the motion path to any object and even being able to orient the object along the motion path as well. So we've covered a lot. We've talked about all the different things to really make your video awesome. In the next video, we're going to talk about exporting your video and sharing your video as well. So we have a lot to cover to kind of wrap up the certification. So let's go ahead and dive into that next.